I started out working in ComSec on the trading floor. I moved on to work as a business analyst, and that's where I started, my critical thinking into how businesses work and how things can be made more efficient. I dabbled in teaching for a little bit. I taught high school economics and religion for a little bit. And then I eventually landed in a product role at St. George Bank prior to the merger with Westpac. At that point in time, the light bulb really came on. I realized, hey, I like creating things. I like to change things. I don't like to just do things, if that makes sense. And that wandering mind that doesn't like to conform was finally let loose, if that makes sense. And I haven't stopped enjoying it. I've loved my time at Westpac, made lots of friends, worked on really cool, successful projects, and implemented lots of things that had great results, worked on lots of things that have failed miserably and learned a lot out of that. And when the opportunity at Spaceship started to surface late last year, it was just too good an opportunity to not really come in and have a go. So yeah, it's been quite the journey.
Yeah, wow. And I love a good failure story. And you said you've had lots. Can you think just off the top of your head what one of those big failures has been?
Ah, where do I start? I think our first attempt at taking a digital experience to allow customers to acquire a product online was quite a failure that taught us a lot. We basically took the systems that our back office staff use and just made it available to customers. And the real good learning out of that is there was a lot of traffic and a lot of demand, but not enough completion ever. And the best learning that came out of that, this is back in 2006. So internet speeds were just starting to pick up. Broadband was starting to go mainstream, and customers' trust around doing more transactions that used personally identifiable data was starting to normalize at that point in time. Up until then, people were quite reserved, thinking, I'm going to lose my personal data, etc. So when we decided to do that, we saw that there was a lot of demand, but we quickly came to the realization that we used to train staff for, 4 to 6 weeks on how to use these systems before they knew how to service customers using them. But then we've deployed it into production for customers to self-service and realized quite quickly that the experience for customers had to be much more guided than the experience for a staff member. This is where the evolution of usability or design thinking started to come in. We started thinking of, well, how do we make these things so easy that a first time user can go end to end and not encounter friction? And this is where our understanding of design principles, customer testing, using verbatim and language that can resonate with a first time user becomes critical to the execution. It's not just good systems, but it's good user experience sitting on top of systems. That's probably the one that resonates with me the most, because I've held that to a very high regard throughout my whole career. Now, everything I do, I think of where's the friction? How do we make sure there's no friction? What's the customer going to feel throughout this experience? Are we creating unnecessary anxiety in that experience for the customer? And how do we remove that away? How do we become more transparent, but still be simple? And yeah, that's probably the one that resonates the most.
Seems like a tremendous learning opportunity early enough in that project and something that's stuck with you since. So, great learning
Absolutely.
opportunity. So,
Absolutely.
we've got a ton of customers who are at all stages of their agile transformations. And I know that this is something that you've had experience with if we go back to your St. George Westpac um, days. Can you give our audience kind of any tips or stories that you encountered when you were going through those agile transformations? What lessons can you share with our audience?
Oh, lots of lessons to share, actually.
This is this is what I love.
Look, I like to sort of position it more as agile evolution more than agile transformation, because no matter what you try to do, you're not just going to drop waterfall and become agile next morning, right? Honestly, I've seen so many attempts, and every single time I see that the graduality of the change is a better predictability of the final outcome that you're going to land. So ultimately, the holy grail that everyone's aspiring to is that as a leader, you can rock up to a team stand up unexpected, and then without being told who is in what role, who the product owner is, who's the engineer is, who the QC is, who the designer is, it becomes hard for you as the leader to work out who's who, because at that point in time, the team is so well converged on customer outcomes that they will self-organize themselves around what each person needs to do. And most of the language being used is really around what are we trying to do for the customer? What's the best thing to do within the capacity that we have to deliver this feature to market as quickly as possible, capture value for the customer and the business as much as possible. Now, this takes a long time to get to, where you can start normalizing to a standardized, common set of goals, common cadence, and common ways of working. And I think it's ultimately about how much empowerment you can give people and how much as a leader you can sort of relegate yourself in the background to allow them to work it out themselves, as long as you're coming in and nudging things along the way and helping people course correct along the way. So the good news is that I actually think at Spaceship we're pretty close to getting there. We have been running Scrum and we have been running sprints for a long time, but it has been largely ceremonials. But over the last quarter, we've done a really good job at embedding more cross-functional people into these teams. But the goal for us is that now we feel like our throughput has actually increased, and that the constant flow of information between the teams is becoming more natural, and there is actually less ambiguity between the teams around, all right, we built it this way, the API is no longer consumable, it doesn't fit what we're trying to do from a front end, and there's less back and forth. So we can really see that the amount of friction between persons in the team is starting to sort of reduce dramatically, and we're starting to see that throughput really increase.